A good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show for this evening's racing action. It is the AROC Racing League's historic Alpha Championship for 2025. We are here for round 6 at Cadwell Park. In the midst of qualifying, we are at the moment just over 20 minutes to go in this session. A session currently being led by Jack Hodson, just ahead of Paul Millman, as we are, as I say, very early on in this session, so we're waiting to get some truly representative times. I will immediately apologise, and I might do this later on as well, for those of you who are going to jump into the action just a little bit later on. I'm going to apologise now. I am slightly under the weather. You may or may not be able to hear that. Yeah, pretty under the weather at the moment, so might not be the most energy-ridden, action-packed Reeve that you've had of late. Don't worry, my voice might not be getting quite as high-pitched as it has on occasion, shall we say. But as I say, it's Jack Hodson and Paul Millman leading the charge. Guy Swarbrick is currently out on track as well, looking to push on from P4 and P3, in fact, according to the timing system at the moment. And these are drivers that have only really completed their outlap so far, so we're waiting to get a truly representative time in just a moment. Well, thank you all for tuning in once again. I know it's a little bit, actually, it's a slightly earlier start to the qualifying than what perhaps we would usually have. So if you're not quite expecting that, apologies. If people do join in a couple of minutes, sorry, the action's already started. But I will do my best, obviously, to get things underway as quickly as possible. But sometimes the boring real world does get in the way, especially since I started my new job last year. But on board at the moment with Guy Swarbrick, he goes second in the midst of this session with a 1:44.30. It's currently climbing up the elevation rise here at the British Green Hell at our, as it has been referred to, many traits shared with that Nürburgring circuit. The tight twists, the technicalities, the undulations, the elevation changes, and the rather unrelenting nature of this high-speed roller coaster here in Lincolnshire. Of course, one of many great tracks available in Lincolnshire, the other one being PFI, Paul Fletcher International Karting Track. The international layout, of course, one of few, up until Silverstone. Until Silverstone's karting track is constructed, few international karting opportunities that you can enjoy in the UK. I think there's the odd event here or there at Wilton Mill, but FIA sanctioned. You're talking about PFI. Either way, we're talking about other Lincolnshire circuits, and Cadwell Park is the one that we are here at this evening to enjoy. Miles Davis is currently the driver leading the charge in qualifying. We're yet to see the likes of Andrew Whitehead out on track. In fact, he is out on track but hasn't been able to post a time, and we'll have more from Andrew Whitehead in just a moment. At the moment, heading round the final couple of corners, it is going to be Colin Keneath who is next to head round the barn right-hander. Fabulous circuit is Cadwell Park, and it's a very challenging track. Add to that challenge is the 1750 GTA, a car that I gave a quick blast of a couple of weeks back and found just how truly challenging it is for our drivers to keep it on the correct course here at Cadwell Park. A very tricky task indeed in these things with their soft suspension, their vintage tyres and engine, which really need to be kept high up in the revs, otherwise it will bog down if you're not climbing on cam, which I know is a repeated theme of my commentary as of late, but it is so true in these cars. We're on board with Colin Keneath as he heads round through the long sweeping right-hander of the Chris curve in just a moment. Miles Davis crosses the line to take your provisional pole, followed by Andrew Whitehead. And Andrew Whitehead storms with a 1:40.932, and he certainly does know his way around as Andrew Whitehead. And just in case you don't believe me, well, I'm not going to give you a track tour. Instead, I'm going to hand over to Andrew Whitehead, who is now going to give us a little bit of a track breakdown here for Cadwell Park.
So welcome to Cadwell, the pride of Lincolnshire, the mini Nordschleife, the Green Hell, for very good reason, nicknamed that way. It's a fabulous circuit. It's undulating, there's brown blind brows, blind apexes. It's not ever so wide, although it looks massively wide with this little car. It's just a fabulous circuit to drive. So what we'll do is we will jump into the car and see what we can go through. Tee it up for the start of a new lap. Don't need to be that slow. So over the start finish line, we are going to position the car as far over to the right as we dare. Now you can see I've used a little bit of grass in the past. I'm on the brakes nice and early, and I'm turning in nice and early. Now I've said this before and I say it again, I left-hand brake, so I left foot brake, so I'm able to balance the brake and the throttle at the same time. But we can see the circuit bends over to the left and it goes uphill, and then we've got a right-hander at the top. So what we're going to try and do is take a little bit of this curb here, and we're going to leave the car as far left as we dare. Now as we go up the hill, we're going to straighten up, and then we're going to drop down into third gear as we brake. Nice bit of, we're not going to be fully on the brakes, we're about half to a quarter pedal, and we're going to let the car drift out to the left hand side of the circuit. Now you can see we've got a brow of a hill in front of us and a right-hander approaching. We're going to brake a little tiny bit, and then we're going to turn in just as we go over the brow of the hill. We're aiming for this piece of curb here on the inside. There's our apex, and as we exit this corner, it's a sweeping bend really, Charlie's, and we're going to let the car run out over to the left. You're okay going on this piece of curbing, but don't go too much on the grass, because it can draw you off further into the grass, and you can sometimes spin the wheels up as well. So as we tear down Park Straight, we're going to get into fourth. We won't reach fifth gear, but as we start to approach this right-hander, you can see we've got some new tarmac, and we've got the 2 board and the 1 board. We're going to brake halfway between the two, fairly hard on the brakes. Now because I left foot brake, I can balance the throttle and I don't lose any revs, so I'm quite happy leaving it in third gear around here. We don't want to take much curb here, you'll go up on 2 wheels, but we just want to hug that piece of curb in a little bit. Don't be afraid to run out a little bit wide and use a bit of grass on the exit here, but we want to be as far over to the left as we can get. Now you might want to be in second gear for that corner. As I say, I'm quite happy with third because I can balance the throttle and I don't lose any revs. So we've got a long sweeping right-hander coming up, which is going to tighten and then go into a left downhill. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the inside here, we're going to let the car drift way out to the outside of the circuit and then cut back across. So the apex for the corner isn't this curbing, there's a piece of concrete just a bit further round the corner. Here we go, this is our apex marker. So once we've hit that, we're pretty much fully on the throttle now, and we're going to let the car drift out. We've got an access road where this ambulance is. We'll get into fourth gear, and then we're going to be as far left as we dare, and just after the access road we're going to do a little bit of brake, we're going to drop it down to third, and we're going to cut across and take quite a chunk of this curb here. Now as soon as we reach the end of this piece of curbing, we're going to be aiming for the inside here. Now then, don't take too much curb, but it is quite comfortable riding a little bit. Don't go too far out to the right as you exit this corner. If you get on the grass, it's impossible to get off. So say we're taking a little bit of curb. I'm not fully on the throttle. So Colin and I were talking in the week about digital inputs and analog inputs. You can see all the time as I'm driving my inputs. When I'm on full throttle, okay, it's full throttle, but when I'm coming off the throttle, it's never really a desperate bang off or a bang on. And same with the brake. I'm feathering them and being able to apply little bits of brake or full brake where needed, but it's never just an on-off situation. So this left-hander that we're approaching, we're more than 90 degrees, we're doubling back on ourselves. I've tried it in third and I can't get round it. It's a second gear corner, but we're going downhill and the car's fairly light from where we've just come over that brow. So we need to be braking nice and early, and we want to turn in nice and early too. So here we go, look, the brakes are applying, I'm on full brake, I'm down to second gear, and I'm already turning in. I'm going to take this curb as much as I can on the inside, and I'm going to let the car flow out, drift out to the right hand side towards the end of this piece of curbing, and then I'm going to position the car over to the right hand side of the circuit, ready for the chicane into the mountain. Now as we approach the chicane, you can see we're going left and then we're going right. We want to brake nice and early for the chicane, and I'm going down to second gear. Now the trick with the chicane is you've got to try and leave the car on the left hand side of the circuit as you exit. You don't want to be drifting out right, because as soon as we're at the end of this piece of curbing here, we're already going to be turning right to straight line this piece of the chicane, the right hander, into the mountain. So again, we've just passed that curbing, we're already straight line. You don't want to take too much of this red sausage curb because it will get a bit bouncy. Again, let the car run out to the left, but don't go too far, because once you get on the grass it's difficult to get off and you can spin the wheels up and lose it a little bit. Now as we approach Hall Bends, we're going to go right left, right left. We can take loads of curb here, we can cut this corner loads, and then we're going to brake in a straight line. We're going to line it up so that we can take a decent chunk of this curb. But again, then we're going to go, after this left we're going right. Do not take this curb here. If you take a chunk of this curb, you'll roll the car, which is the first bad bit. But you do need to take a little bit. Hang on a second, we need to go back. You need to be tight on this curb without taking a load of it. But we also need to be as far left over here to the left as we can get. If you position the car towards the middle of the circuit as you go over that brow, it's going to be fully airborne. And when it's fully airborne, of course, you can't brake, and you're going to end up over here somewhere in this tyre wall. Now, I don't know if we can. I don't know if we can see this. Let me just have a look. I keep getting the wrong button. Sorry. I want to pause this here. If I go into, you can see, look, the right hand side of the car is off the ground. If we take any more of the right hand side of the circuit, it'll be fully off the ground, and then we're in big trouble. This is by far and away the hardest part of the circuit. So we want to be as far over to the left as we can get. And then we've got this right hander coming up, which again, it's more than 90 degrees. We're almost doubling back on ourselves, and it's really, really tight. You need to be so slow here. It's a second gear corner. What I do, and I don't know whether you'll see this, I'm aiming for this piece of shading here from the tree. And I'm hard on the brakes. If you're over towards the right hand side of the circuit, or if you brake too late, you'll go straight on and you're in this green barrier, or just on the grass and it's difficult to get off. So you need to be braking really early, and quite a lot of brake down into second gear, and then you can turn in fairly early and take a good chunk of this curve. Because it's not a raised curve, it's in a little bit of a dip, you can allow the wheels to roll over it. But you can see I've got a lot of lock on there. Let's go back a little bit. Got a lot of lock on. I'm taking a good chunk of this curb. I'm feathering the brake and the throttle, letting the car run out to the left, and then we're going to position the car for this sweeping right-hander into the start-finish straight. Now, I'm quite happy leaving it in third around here sometimes, but I've dropped down to second a few times. I still don't know where I'm actually quite going to be on it. This lap was a second gear one. You have to be careful if you're in second gear, because if you put too much throttle on the way out, as you let the car drift out to the left-hand side of the circuit, you will spin the wheels up and it does get a bit leery. But I'm into third fairly quickly as I exit the corner. So let's have a look at that again at full speed in another lap. So these laps are 147, and then I've got 140.6 and another 140.6. So I'm over on the left, a little bit of brake, left, left, left. See, I take that curve there and I'm going to turn in just over the brow. Take this curve on the right, let it drift out to the left, up into fourth gear, and then as we go over the brow of the hill, we're looking for the new piece of tarmac, and we're going to brake in between the 2 and the 1. 1, 2, 3, brake, down to third or second if you're more comfortable. Don't take that curb on the right. We're looking for the piece of concrete after the curbing. There we go.
Well, a massive thank you to Andrew Whitehead for that brilliant little insight into running a good lap here at Cadwell Park. Some really interesting tips and tricks, some fascinating insight into a little nuances that perhaps you don't think about. Also, some tips and tricks on the general driving style for this car, and also, as I say, for this track as well. So for those of you who are partaking in the AROC Racing Leagues, or thinking about it, or might be jumping in to the Giuliettas here next week at Cadwell Park, take note, folks, take note, take some tips from that, because obviously different driving car, but some will still apply. Just under 5 minutes to go in this qualifying session, by the way. Feedback, more than welcome for that one. If it was something that you quite enjoyed while having qualifying on in sort of the background and that in the foreground, if you want a bit more of that in the future, do let us know. Something we're looking to experiment and try new things with the broadcast, but less than 5 minutes, less than 4 minutes in fact, to go in this qualifying session. Now, Colin Knief leads the charge with a 140.1. That is quite comfortably the fastest lap we've seen in this session so far, but Andrew Whitehead splits Knief and Daly at the moment. Watch out for Whitehead. Obviously, he knows this place very well, hence why we had a track diagram from him. But Matt Daly is the driver who Whitehead is most scared of heading into this round. Actually had a brief chat with Andrew Whitehead before, and the words were, Matt says he loves Cadwell, so that'll be him away and off and into the distance. Well, so far, that seems to be true with a 139.831. It has taken around about 20 minutes in this session for that lap to come together, but Matt Daly with a blistering Sector 1 and Sector 3, a 50.7 and a 10.2. Apologies. Yeah, a 50.7 and a 10.2 for the purple sectors, Sector 1 and Sector 3. See Matt Daly quite comfortably in the lead of this session, about 0.3 of a second faster than any other driver. Less than 3 minutes to go in our running. That took 11 laps for Matt Daly to achieve, and obviously he's very capable, very talented is Matt Daly, but I would question whether or not that can be replicated in the final few minutes, because that is a scorching lap from Matt Daly. Certainly a tough one for the likes of Colin Knief and Andrew Whitehead to try and replicate, as Knief is up onto 2 wheels, is able to still point in the right direction, and we're on board once again with Andrew Whitehead. Here we go then, less than 1 minute to go in this qualifying session. I'm trying to build excitement, but again, sorry, my body is failing me at the moment. It's the first glimpse of winter, and I am running on 3 cylinders already. Matt Daly leads us, 139.831. 30 seconds left on the clock. A little kick of oversteer there, but he does correct it. He's not going to be able to match his previous best time on this run, but might get an opportunity to head around once again as we start what will be the final attempt for Matt Daly. We're going to stay on board with him as he enjoys this run. Here we go then, Daly runs down through Coppice and into Charlie's, gets up onto 2 wheels, and that is the lap compromise. That is all Matt Daly can do in this run as he runs down towards the park straight. That isn't quite so straight. Matt Daly brings an end to his qualifying session. Running in P2 at the moment is Colin Knief. Heads around the final corner. In through the barn we go. And drop down towards the start-finish straight. 140.160 to beat. Whitehead's very close behind, only 0.03 of a second. Knief gets into the 39s. That was no personal best sector on that lap. It was just one of those laps which is strung together nicely and consistent throughout to make a fastest lap. And it gets close to Matt Daly, but isn't quite able to usurp him and remains in P2. Still a front row start for Colin Knief as it stands, unless Andrew Whitehead can do anything at the moment. Whitehead heads round the the barn right-hander and isn't able to improve. It will be a 1 minute 40.192, his best overall. Miles Davis had an impressive first go out here at Cadwell Park with a 141.893. And that pretty much brings an end to this qualifying session. Jack Hodson crosses the line with a 143 that time around. In fact, no, it was a 148, so I imagine an issue on that lap. But that brings an end to qualifying here at Cadwell Park in our historics. We'll catch you in just a few minutes as we get ready for race 1. And welcome back to the action, ladies and gentlemen. Just over 30 seconds now until lights out, and well, as you can see, there's been some commotion on the grid. Jack Hodson is slightly out of position, as is John Cole. I imagine these two will unfortunately have to serve a drive-through penalty after that. I'm not quite sure what happened, but I think I've got an idea. Here's your front row. It's Matt Daly and Colin Knief side by side, literally side by side on this grid. Andrew Whitehead, Miles Davis, Alan Matthews, John Cole, briefly sort of side by side. Jack Hodson, not really side by side. Guy Swarbrick and Paul Millman completing the grid. We are ready to go racing. The revs rise as our drivers try to get these cars off the line. It's all about revs to get these cars off the line. It's 6 red lights on the gantry. And we are away for race 1 here at Cadwell Park. It is, of course, a slightly slower start for Jack Hodson, but a good getaway for Matt Daly. That's exactly what he needed to build on that impressive qualifying performance. Miles Davis is still in the mix and actually jumps up into P3 ahead of Andrew Whitehead. Nice execution of the start 4. Oh dear, that's a big incident for Andrew Whitehead. Andrew Whitehead caught out very early on in this race, is on the roof, so has to dive into the pits. That is pretty much race over for one of our championship contenders. What a shame for Andrew Whitehead. He will be able to continue on, but will be a good half a lap down by the time he does so. Could still well be points on the cards. It's a 25-minute race, as I say, and Cadwell Park has been likened to the Nordschleife by not just myself, but Andrew Whitehead as well. And Matt Daly still leads us, as we have quite a few damage indications coming up on my screen, folks. Now, everyone is pointing in the right direction, it seems, so that is good to see. 24 minutes left on the clock, sorry. Matt Daly leads us as we continue on this race. Perhaps that's unsurprising given the pace that he did demonstrate in these qualifying sessions. 7 tenths of a second is the gap between himself and Colin Knief. Miles Davis is doing a commendable job here in charge of this battling. Continue on. As we see, Paul Millman is trying to find a way past. Apologies, we had a bit of a glitch with the stream there. But here we go. Matt Daly is all of a sudden looking pretty under pressure here as we continue on. Let's see whereabouts they are on track. They're heading through Barn right-hander at the very end of the lap now. Down the start-finish straight we will go. Obviously, Andrew Whitehead is a threat that has been neutralised in this race. Miles Davis only has to worry about Alan Matthews behind at this point. Miles Davis pushing on in P3 then, but really where all the battling is going on is between that long sweeping banked right-hander before we head down the park, not so straight, as Colin Knief is putting so much pressure on Matt Daly. This is fantastic. I did fear for a little while in that qualifying session as we go side by side into park. We will go in just a moment. Cracking move by Colin Knief, who hangs it round the outside, gets the move done before the braking zone into park. That is remarkable stuff as we now head through Charlie's Curve. The long sweeping right-hander yet again. How many times can I say that at one venue? But Colin Knief, what a drive there. It was all about that momentum out of the park straight, out of the park straight. I think that's what made the biggest difference. Being able to be up in the revs, high on the cams, really helps these cars. Again, do a shot every time I say that, but it means that Colin Knief was able to get the nose out in front, get ahead before the end of that straight. Paul Millman, meanwhile, is retiring from this session. Unfortunately, that promotes Andrew Whitehead into 8th position, a few seconds down on Jack Hodson. Our close battles rage on as we head through the really tight twisty stuff towards the bends at the very last part of the lap, and Andrew Whitehead in his track guide did warn of that. You don't want to take too much of that curb. It will get 4 wheels up into the air, and of course you've got no braking, there's no derating to be done when you've got no tyres contacting the ground, and Matt Daly did very well to recover that, but might have compromised himself. The driver who looked so confident in qualifying is under threat here from Miles Davis. Now, Miles Davis did a fantastic job, of course, in qualifying, ran in P4, and is closing up on Matt Daly in this race. This is a really strong performance from the yellow and red liveried car. That is slightly different to the yellow and a little bit red liveried car just in front of him. And our top 3 are really clearing themselves from the rest of the pack now. This is a truly remarkable drive from Miles Davis. Admittedly, we haven't had many rookies this year, but if you were to currently place your bets as Rookie of the Year, well, Andy Webb's also done a fantastic job. Miles Davis is shining as well, so they're both on the podium, let's put it that way. Either way, Colin Keefe still charges this race out in front. And as I say, I did fear during that qualifying session, were we going to see a bit of a typical Matt Daly masterclass? That's what Andrew Whitehead's I'll try that again. This cold really does need to shift out of the way quite quickly. That's what Andrew Whitehead suspected would be the case. Is that Matt Daly would just get a really strong qualifying in, had some fantastic pace and really enjoys this track. He'd get a good start and just clear away from that pack. But Colin Keefe rather reversed those fortunes in qualifying. I did think, seeing such a remarkable lap from Daly, that was it. It was going to be settled. But Keefe, late on, clawed it, managed to grab it back right at the end of the session, and now maintains the race lead. Has done so for a number of laps. The trading purple sectors are Keefe, Miles Davis and Matt Daly. So it's anyone's game at this point. Your top three covered by 1.5 seconds, breaking away from the rest of the pack pretty comfortably. On for a great drive are these drivers. Andrew Whitehead had further issues here on track, was heading through towards Barn, and unfortunately has had to abandon this lap effectively. He's able to get back underway, has very minimal damage on front, still not ideal for his race. Guy Swarbrick, meanwhile, is running in P7, having a nice little drive out there, good few points on offer potentially. Jack Hodson is your driver in P6, of course, had those difficulties at the race start. I don't think it's actually afflicted or affected John Cole or Jack Hodson in any way after that though, which is good to see. And then we have Alan Matthews running in P3, and then it's your race leaders giving us all of the battling at the front end of the pack. Keefe versus Daly as they head on down through the middle sector and towards the technical bends at the end of the lap. Of this race. Perhaps that's unsurprising given the I'll try that again. As I say, really not on my A game today, to apologise. We're enjoying this battle on screen at the moment. Less than half a second separating these two drivers. Keefe leads the charge ahead of Daly still, as we see Daly soaring at the wheel from that interior shot there. But I did want to give mention to everyone watching along at home at the moment. Big thank you to those of you who tune in, as ever, if possible, and you do enjoy what you are seeing when I'm usually a little bit more energetic and a little bit less flu-ridden. Please do drop a like, get some feedback in, get some comments going. I do monitor the YouTube chat, so if you have any queries, questions, feedback, points you want to raise me, or points you want to shout at me for, feel free, do drop them in. I'll make sure to give them a damn good read. But 16 minutes to go in this race, and we're still seeing Keefe and Daly trading purple sectors. Davis dropping back ever so slightly, still has a comfortable margin down to drives in P4, but is just that little ways behind Colin Keefe and Matt Daly. Now this could be a really good race for Miles Davis, has obviously picked up a podium already in his debut season, but I'm sure would very much appreciate some more. Help him out in the championship standings as well, and we'll take a look at those in a few minutes. And also could be some really valuable experience to head into the likes of the next race, our reverse grid race coming up after the end of race 1, and also the next round here at Cadwell in a week's time in our Juliettas. So we see Matt Daly having a look down the inside there. Not able to make a move stick, but is achingly close at the moment as this car just loves showing us the rear seat. What we want to have a look at, though, is this battle heading through towards the next part of the lap, which is sector 2. I was about to say they've dropped off my timing system in them, and then I realised I was looking for 2 blips on the track, but they are oh so close, and it means that they're only showing up as 1 blip at the moment. So it's Colin Knief and Matt Daly. 7/10 of a second is that gap at the moment. And Matt Daly's had a big issue. He's able to continue on, but an unfortunate spin means Daly drops off Colin Knief after putting on such a fight for so long in this race. Davis actually now gets ahead of Matt Daly. I think Matt Daly is having car issues. We did hear an over-rev. I think Matt Daly has misshifted and potentially damaged his car. It's able to continue on. It's still running, at least I think, but that engine damage is going to severely hamper performance if it hasn't grenaded the engine. That is a terrible shame for Matt Daly, who was looking to be the big challenge in this race. Did such an impressive job in qualifying, has kept the measure of Colin Knief at least, but unfortunately brings his race to a premature end. What a shame for Matt Daly. We go on board though with Colin Knief, who now leads this race by 10 seconds. Miles Davis is your driver in P2, and Alan Matthews, a driver by the way, who hasn't had a rig for a little while, is back in on the action, which is fantastic to see. Is under pressure from John Cole, another driver who hasn't been in on the action for a little while, and they're now squabbling it out for a podium. Alan Matthews, by the way, the PC is so new, Assetto was installing just before we got racing. Assetto was, you know, he hasn't got all of his graphics set up. I'm sure his rig and I don't believe he's got force feedback this evening, and I know he doesn't even have Discord. So that is dedication to the cause for Alan Matthews, and he seems to be unfazed by those tricky circumstances. He's in P3, and this has now become a battle for the podium. Shout out as well to the likes of Matt Daly, Guy Swarbrick, who was briefly having a little bit of a scrap, but Jack Coslin has unfortunately had some issues in this race. but John Cole sits behind Alan Matthews at the moment as Andrew Whitehead is promoted into P3. P5, sorry. Try that again. Oh dear, that's a big one for John Cole, who finds himself up on two wheels. I think only just slightly kissed the curb there in this rather unforgiving GTA 1750 at times. Punishes the drivers, spits them out, and John Cole drops down to P4. That makes things a little bit easier for Andrew Whitehead, who is now up into 4th position on the road. Cole having to dive into the pits will drop back behind quite a few competitors at this point, promoting Guy Swarbrick into a P5, which, correct me if I'm wrong, is a season best so far. So some good points on offer for Guy Swarbrick here. Let's have a look at how that championship shapes up at the moment. Again, I'm not at my best, so I doubt I'm going to be able to do some on-the-fly maths for you, but we'll see what we can take a look at. And it is Matt Daly who leads the charge at the moment, but certainly won't as we head into that reverse grid race. Andrew Whitehead, your driver, in P2, and again, he's going to lose some points. Andrew Whitehead will take the lead of this championship as Colin Knief is a few points back, but this is an important step in trying to take back the championship fight, or at least continue it on. Now, this is a sight we weren't expecting to see, folks. It's Matt Daly and Colin Knief occupying the same part of the track, but that is because it's Matt Daly trying to find a way past, or sorry, that is because it's Colin Knief trying to find a way past Matt Daly at this point, which is not what we would have expected after the first couple of laps. Alan Matthews is your driver in P4 in the championship and will not jump ahead of Colin Knief. He will remain behind to lose a little bit of ground at least, and Miles Davis should jump up substantially from the likes of Andy Webb and Jack Hudson and should separate himself out, as Miles Davis has 80 points to his name, Andy Webb 78, Jack Hudson 56, Guy Swarbrick has 36, so we'll close up on Jack Hudson as it stands ever so slightly. And then we have Steve Knight, not present this evening unfortunately, Greg Young 30 points to his name, Andy Craker in P11 28, Mike Hilton P12 with 21, John Cole 15 points to his name in P13, sorry. Paul Millman with 6 points to his name, unfortunately not going to score from this round, likewise for Alex Smith. But some interesting developments at the top end of the championship fight in this round. Here we go then, final 5 minutes of this race, and Colin Cleef is controlling things nicely. What we are seeing is the released pace of Matt Daly pretty much. He's had that car repaired, obviously, so he's probably got some fresh tyres on it, and maybe, I'm not sure if he has, might have adjusted the fuel trim. I imagine he's probably kept it the same in preparation for the reverse grid coming up in a few minutes. But we're seeing that with Daly ahead of Cleef, Daly's actually unlapping himself ever so slightly. He's beginning to claw back a bit of time, and that is the commentator's curse, folks. The commentator's curse very much in full effect. It won't make any changes to the positions, I don't believe, unless Jack Hodson catches up. But I am very sorry, Matt Daly. That is Cleef now lapping and charging and controlling this race very nicely indeed. Some fabulous shots of the cars here at Cadwell Park, I must say. Some really lovely views here of our GTA 1750s. They're a tricky car to handle. They're a bit of a bucking bronco in some ways, but I think it's worth it. They are fantastic cars to behold, and what a race to behold it has been for Colin Cleef, who has controlled things so well here at Cadwell Park. Not a wide track. You would have heard that from Andrew Whitehead's track guide as well. Can you tell I've also listened to that in preparation for this evening's race? Not a wide track at Cadwell, but this diminutive, correctly sized little classic saloon just makes it look like a wide circuit in various points. It is such a cracking little car. Is the GTA 1750. I'm yet to drive one of these 105 series cars in real life, and it's definitely on the bucket list of not just cars to drive, but one day I desperately want one. I want to own a 105 series car at some point in the future. I need to hurry up and get one while I can, really. But less than 90 seconds left on the clock now. Cleef leads us on to the next lap of the race with no major challenge for anyone else. At the moment, it's Cleef Davis with a fantastic podium early on in his AROC Racing League's career to add to the tally. And we have Adam Matthews in P3, Andrew Whitehead P4, John Cole P5, Matt Daly up into P6, Jack Hodson P7, and then it looks like Guy Swarbrick's had further issues, unfortunately, and drops down to P8. That's your order for this race. We have less than 60 seconds left on the clock. Less than 30 seconds to go then, and it's a 1:40.1, I should add, predicted at the moment for Colin Keith, which is really impressive stuff. Late on in the race, very late on in the race stint, to be keeping up this sort of pace. There's a few tenths off his ultimate qualifying pace, but obviously we've got a very light fuel tank. These cars do drink at a wide open throttle track like this, so the weight will be quite considerably down compared to the start of the race. But the tyres, obviously, they're going to be fairly hard, vintage, vulcanised rubber, I assume, but will still be tricky late on it into the race. Of course, you have to factor in fatigue and the challenges of negotiating the 1750 for 25 minutes. So that is still a very impressive, very consistent pace from Colin Keith as he leads us on to the final lap of this race. Here we go then, into the second sector we go. We're going to jump on board with Colin Keith for one last time in race one. A really impressive run he has enjoyed for his first 15 laps. I say first 15 laps? 15 laps of this race. One of the longer laps we actually visit in the AROC Racing Leagues. He climbs the elevation change before we dip into the bends once more. 23 seconds is the gap between himself and Miles Davis, which is not to say that Miles Davis can't keep up. He had a really impressive run early on in this race of managing to achieve that. So let's see what race 2 or reverse grid race beholds for us in just a few moments. But around barn goes Colin Keith for one last time. We have the dip before we head across the finish line, and it's going to be a big congratulations to Colin Keith, who takes race 1 victory in very convincing fashion indeed. Had that fantastic battle with Matt Daly early on, snatched P1 ahead of pole sitter Matt Daly, controlling things very nicely, and further congratulations will also be going to Miles Davis, right in the midst of that scrap, actually was keeping the pressure on and takes P2 in the end. Does Miles Davis to add to his roster of podiums. Davis is going to be a driver to watch out for as we progress further into his AROC Racing League's career. He just seems to go from strength to strength at the moment, but Alan Matthews will be the next driver to come across the line as he heads on to the start-finish straight to round out your podium and take P3 in the end. In the end, it is going to be a P6 for Matt Daly. What a shame that his race did not plan out the way he would have wanted. Jack Hodson comes home in P7 and Guy Swabber will be classified P8. Andrew Whitehead actually comes home P4, which, given how his race started, aka on its roof, that is not necessarily a bad thing. Andrew Whitehead would have wanted more points from that. He's obviously in the midst of a championship battle with Matt Daly, but actually, after all is said and done, extends to actually take a championship lead as we head into that second race in just a few minutes' time. John Cole will be your final driver to... That's an interesting line through barn. I think John Cole might have some car issues. Either way, he's going to head round barn. Now, sorry, I didn't realise he wasn't yet on barn. Heads on to the start-finish straight and we'll round out your top 5. That completes the order for this race. We'll catch you in just a few minutes as we get ready for race 2, our reverse grid race. And welcome back to the action, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are on the grid, ready for race 2, our reverse grid race. Front row, it's Jack Hodson and Matt Daly. Row 2, it's John Cole and Andrew Whitehead. Then we have Alan Matthews and Miles Davis, followed by Colin Keneath and Guy Swarbrick, completing our 8-car field for our reverse grid race. 30 seconds to go then, and the revs are already rising as drivers are getting poised to take off for race 2. Here we go then, 20 seconds left on the clock. Let's see who wins out. Can Jack Hodson make amends for his race 1 antics on grid previously? Let's find out, as the revs are pretty much bouncing off the red limiters if they have one. We have 6 red lights on the gantry, and we are away for race 2 here this evening. It's a squirrely start for Jack Hodson, who suffers with grip problems, but Matt Daly gets a nose out in front and takes your race lead as we head into the first corner. Andrew Whitehead's up into third, Miles Davis fourth. Colin Keneath drops down the order, rather isn't able to progress on up as much as he'd like, and Guy Swarbrick, I think, is going for the survival strategy and just decides to dip back from that mid-pack scuffle of squabble. Sorry, I've invented a new word. I tried to say, I think I tried to say like squabble and shuffle. Squabble, squaffle, there we go, new word for you. Either way, down the inside goes Colin Keneath and up into P5 briefly, but goes very deep into the corner. Andrew Whitehead, meanwhile, hangs it round the inside through Charlie's curve. We go, what a move from Andrew Whitehead, who takes the race lead. This is making amends for the first race, isn't it, folks? And saying you don't need to do it in qualifying, you can do it in race 2. I have a feeling, though, it's going to be a very difficult run for Andrew Whitehead coming up, as he has it all to do to keep Matt Daly at bay. Here we go, side by side. It's Matt Daly and Miles Davis as we head on to the next lap of this race. This is a battle that we saw glimpses of at the start of race 1, and Miles Davis, with a fantastic run down the start-finish straight, is able to take charge ever so slightly, only momentarily though, as we see Davis and Daly squabbling as Davis doesn't try to run Matt Daly out of road, but says, you know what, this track's my track, it's my overtake, I've got the lead, and he does hold the lead for a little while. Matt Daly drops all the way down to P6 in that squabble. What a drive from so many of our competitors here as we head into Park now. Andrew Whitehead now leads our race. Just ahead of Andrew Whitehead is Miles Davis runs in P2 side by side with Colin Keneath. Colin Keneath making amends for a poor race 1 start by his own standards. And Keneath maintains a run in P2. Then we have Davis down in P3. Cole's having a look down the inside of Davis, but there is Matt Daly, and Cole effectively gets pinched. It's Matt Daly up into P4. John Cole drops down behind Swarbrick as well into P6, and that means it's going to be Whitehead, Keneath and Davis, your top 3 in this race so far. This is a fantastic squabble shaping up in this early stage of the race. Whitehead still leads us, with Colin Knief just behind Davis and Daly, forming a succession here in our top 4. John Cole is in P5, Guy Swarbrick's just a little bit behind that as well. Your top 6 cars covered by 5 seconds. Here we go, we head on to the start-finish straight. Whitehead leads us into turn 1. Knief is a little ways behind, as is Davis. A pretty consistent gap, actually, between our top 4 competitors at the moment. Just behind there as well, we can see John Cole and Guy Swarbrick enjoying their own little battle. Just a few seconds behind here as Swarbrick tries to find a way past John Cole. Knief's up onto 2 wheels momentarily. We'll see John Cole head into shot now. And yeah, Guy Swarbrick enjoying a bit of battling out there. At least he was before John Cole got eviscerated by the scenery. That is John Cole's chances in this race brought to an end. Perhaps unsurprisingly, he does retire. Whitehead leads us then. John Cole is pretty much, I mean, you can't blame him for that. It just looked like the scenery gave up on him. But John Cole is retiring. Colin Knief is your driver in P2 at the moment. Just behind these 2 drivers as well, we have our battle going on between Davis and Daly. This was for the lead of the race previously. A slightly iffy run through to the technical section at the end of Sector 2 and starting Sector 3 means that Davis drops behind Matt Daly. Matt Daly now taking charge of this battling duo and fighting for that spot on the podium. What a turnaround in fortunes this race has been as well for Andrew Whitehead, who of course didn't have the best turnout in race 1 in the end, but is now leading the pack and is under a little bit of pressure, but is controlling things very nicely at the front end of the running. Approaching the halfway point in this race now. Apologies if you've just tuned in or you've skipped the earlier parts. I don't blame you for drowning me out. Very under the weather, so bit more of a broadcast to enjoy the sounds of these fantastic little twin cam GTAs this evening. But we see Whitehead taking some rather interesting lines through the technical part of Sector 3. Colin Keneath having issues in this race, dropping him out of contention, which means that it's going to be Whitehead versus Daly now. And Daly is the driver that Andrew Whitehead has been most fearing heading into this weekend. Was notably quicker on the previous lap compared to Andrew Whitehead. Let's see how this battle does begin to shape up. Down the park straight we go, and Andrew Whitehead knows, very much so knows, that Matt Daly is closing up as we head into park. Now, there is an opportunity under the braking zone, potentially, if Daly is close enough. He is not this time around. We have the Charlie's Curve coming up next, so we're going to have to hang it round the outside. Potentially is Matt Daly, but it's a tight part of the circuit. As we mentioned earlier, these cars are very narrow, so they make the track comparatively quite wide, but still, it's a brave driver who can pull off a move around the outside, for example, here at Cadwell Park in Lincolnshire. We drop down through into the second sector now. Just behind is Miles Davis on for another podium, which would be a fantastic drive for Miles Davis here as we head up into Sector 3 now. Just under 12 minutes left on the clock. We have some major elevation changes to negotiate. Part of the track that will upset the cars. I think this is a part of the track where Matt Daly just seems a little bit more confident at this point. As we see, nearly side by side was Daly. We're going to head on through to the penultimate corner in just a moment, which can catch a few drivers out as there is contact between the two drivers, both stopping, both trying to be courteous. Oh no, there's Matt Daly and Miles Davis involved in this as well. It's a car park. It's a car park in the final corner. Miles Davis says, well, I'm going through. Don't blame you, Miles Davis. You didn't have an incident, and Miles Davis is now your race leader. Andrew Whitehead runs in P2 and Matt Daly in P3. I suspect what happened there is that Whitehead knew Daly was behind. There was a roundabout a car width, but maybe wasn't expecting Daly to go for it. And Daly, of course, wanted to go for the overtake, or perhaps couldn't get the car slowed down. For whatever reason, there was contact. We saw Daly stopped, so he clearly was trying to be courteous to Whitehead. Whitehead also kind of wanting to stop as well, or at least struggling to get the car pointed in the right direction. Davis, wasn't his fault, not his incident, more than entitled to just continue on. So I'm glad to see that Miles Davis is now leading the charge in this race. There will be maybe some damage from that for Daly and Whitehead. It'd be very minimal if there is some. And now we see that Davis controls things by 1.5 seconds. Could we be on for a maiden victory here, folks? That would be a fantastic piece of news for Miles Davis. Has already impressed so far in his inaugural season. But to take away a race win on a weekend where he has looked very strong, admittedly, would just be that bit more impressive. And speaking of an impressive start to the season, let's have a look at how the championship is shaping up at the moment. Andrew Whitehead leads the points tally with 190 points. As it stands, he will extend that here at Cadwell Park. What a big story for Matt Daly, your Cadwell Park enthusiast here, to potentially be losing out in terms of points. So it's Whitehead 190 points, Daly 186 as we head into race 2. Keneath on 141, 14 points ahead of Alan Matthews on 127. Miles Davis is on 98 points and could be taking away quite a few more as it currently stands. He's in P4 in the championship and P1 in this race. Then we have Webb on 78, just ahead of Jack Hodson on 62. Guy Swarbrick is on 40 points now, jumped ahead of Steve Knight. Then we have Greg Young, Andy Craig, John Cole, Mike Hilton, Paul Millman and Alex Smith completing the points tally there. John Cole closing up on the likes of Andy Craig and Greg Young, potentially Steve Knight as well in this round. In fact, no, he won't. He has retired from the session. Apologies. We have 9 minutes left to go in our second race of the evening. It is Miles Davis who leads the charge. Here we go, we head into that first corner. We see it's Whitehead and Daly who are getting pretty close as we head back onto the start finish straight here. Whitehead defending P2 here. What a turnaround of fortunes this has been. This defensive battle would have been for the race lead earlier on, but for both drivers, unfortunately, the points on offer are just that a little bit lower heading into the final phase of this race. Got around about 5 laps left to go out on track for these two drivers. They're seconds separating them. Here we go, we start the next lap now. Whitehead running in P2, Daly having a look to see if there's anywhere to go into the first corner, but instead just stays behind, benefits from any potential slipstream that there might be on offer in these cars. Not saying that it's going to be out like a Formula car, but every little helps, doesn't it, as we head through down the park straight once again. What is interesting as well is that these two drivers are actually closing up on Miles Davis as we head down towards the park bend. And that does mean that we are going to once again have a battle for the lead here, folks, as Daly looked a little bit compromised running through into the curve. Coming up next, all top 3 separated by less than a second. Really impressive running from our top 3 here. And we drop down. The elevation changes once more. 0.4 of a second is your gap between Davis and Whitehead. 0.4 of a second is your gap between Whitehead and Daly as we run into Sector 3 in just a moment. We keep looking at the scaffolding in the back of the cars, which is not what we want to have a look at. And we climb some hills once more, being very wary of the sausage curbs there, which will upset these cars in quite an unforgiving manner, it must be said. Just kissing the apex beautifully there, making sure that no drivers end up on 2 wheels. We have seen a bit of a habit of these cars, of course. And Miles Davis heads down through Barn in just a moment. And there we can see Daly having a look down, a brief glance down the inside, sorry, at least as we head on to the start finish straight once more. Once again, there's Daly seeing what he can do, sizing up his opponent, and there we go. The pressure causes Andrew Whitehead to crack ever so slightly, and through goes Matt Daly into P2. Miles Davis controls things, and now Matt Daly is unleashed. All of a sudden, Andrew Whitehead, who in that battle effectively was Miles Davis's best friend, because Whitehead was occupied with Daly, which meant that Miles Davis could focus on his own race, didn't have to worry too much about the threat from the pole sitter from qualifying in this race weekend. Closing up on him, but now Daly has been released. 3 minutes to go. Can Davis keep his cool and bring it home for his maiden AROC Racing League's victory? We'll just have to wait and see. Less than 2 minutes left on the clock now. We can see that Davis still controlling things very nicely here. This is going to be a nail-biter, folks. Maiden victory is on the cards here. That is what is being played for. That is what is at stake as we head in to Sector 3 now. It gets really tight and technical here, and Daly, as I've said, just looks to be the most confident out on track. I'm a bit astonished really that this race weekend hasn't quite shaped up his way, because Daly has really shone out on track most of the time we've seen him on camera. Whitehead currently looking like he's going to settle for P3, as Davis now has what will be two of probably the most sweat-inducing laps of his AROC Racing League's career so far. He's got to navigate his 1750 GTA around Cadwell in the race lead to bring it home for his maiden victory, and he's got to do that with Matt Daly just behind. Here we go then. First couple of corners to negotiate. Boxed off as we head now down through the park straight. We see a little bit of a squirm for the back end of Matt Daly's car there as he goes tighter to the inside. That might mean that he's going for a more ideal line, and Davis is scrubbing up a little bit of pace, but that might not be the worst thing in the world, because it's probably quite a good defensive line and might just be a little bit safer, a little bit more comfortable to bring the car home with if you're not pushing on completely 10/10ths, and he can instead focus on defending. They can afford to defend as well, can Miles Davis at this point. He can back up Daly somewhat into Andrew Whitehead because he's got that bit of air gap behind, so they don't have to go completely full pace. Davis can pretty much be in full defence mode at this point, as long as he doesn't catch himself out by going too hard on defence and allowing Daly on through, which we obviously have seen in the past. We head up through the elevation rises into Sector 3 once more on this, the penultimate lap of this race, for what could be a pretty big celebration if things go Davis's way. But it's a great run for Matt Daly, who has a look down the inside. Davis has to be so brave through the S's, is able to keep the car pointing the right direction, got the car airborne over the front axle on a number of occasions there. God, I thought I wouldn't have much voice heading into this round, never mind as I leave it, but this just can't be ignored, folks. We head onto the start-finish straight. Davis still leads us to start what will be the final lap of this race, perhaps the most important lap that Miles Davis has completed so far in his AROC Racing League's career. The two yellow liveried cars now have a duel to end all discussion between the idea that Matt Daly and Colin Kneef, and add Andrew Whitehead into that as well, reign supreme here in these championships. Miles Davis, a rookie this season, is on the scene, folks, and is pushing on very well indeed. Just look how well he is defending. He does not want to let up and allow Matt Daly to steal this maiden victory from him, and I don't blame him at all. I mean, Matt Daly is a formidable opponent, but Miles Davis is currently putting on a fantastic show for us. This is fantastic stuff. 0.2 of a second is your gap between Daly and Davis. We drop down towards one of the lowest elevation parts of the circuit once more. The gap has been at some point a tenth, maybe less than a tenth, but yet Miles Davis does not crack under the pressure. Just a few corners to go, and I'm afraid to say, folks, it's some of the most technical corners on the track yet. Here we go. We climb up the elevations, avoid the sausage curb, and there we go. Just look at how much pace Matt Daly has. He's soaring at the wheels, trying to find a way on through. We kiss the first curb. The second one comes up next. Matt Daly's on two wheels as he tries to find a way past Miles Davis. In the final couple of corners, there's contact between the two drivers into the penultimate corner. There's about a car length now that could have cost Matt Daly race victory here. We head round through and into Barn in just a moment. Miles Davis heads on to the start-finish straight and takes your race victory. Congratulations, Miles Davis. Well done, Matt Daly. Brings it home in P2. Andrew Whitehead rounds out the podium there, but Miles Davis, maiden AROC Racing League's victory, and what a victory it was. That was not made easy. Thank you, both drivers. Thank you, Andrew Whitehead. Thank you, everyone racing tonight, for putting on a fantastic show for us. Miles Davis and Matt Daly then bring it home after a fantastic battle. Alan Matthews is running along in P4, might be losing out to Jack Hodson here as we head on to that start-finish straight. Has a bit of an issue, does Alan Matthews, into Sector 3, and might just be caught out. Guy Swarbrick is going to bring it home in P6, will be classified P6 in the end. I don't believe Colin Kneef will be classified from this one, but here we go. Alan Matthews heads into that final corner and runs home in P4. It was under threat for a little while, but it looks to be pretty safe now. As we see, Alan Matthews, P4, Jack Hodson completing your top 5. But I must congratulate the likes of Miles Davis, who weaves about in celebration. A well-deserved celebration as well. We got some typical victory drifts and donuts from Matt Daly, who is enjoying some of the scenery. And there we go. There is Guy Swarbrick, who is apparently in the Stanston lowered spec of GTA 1750 this evening. He's on the floor, so to speak. Either way, here is your maiden victor, Miles Davis. Congratulations, Miles, for an utterly brilliant drive. I'm sure there's going to be more of those to come. It must feel good. But that brings an end to this evening's running. Thank you very much for watching this evening and putting up with my rather ill self and the silence in between my rather ill self. I'm going to go and find some Lent tip now. So thank you very much for watching this evening, and a good night.